In the first mini course in this sequence, we describe the qualitative aspects of EV ownership. Recalling our discussion, the overall cost of ownership incorporates fuel costs, the resale value differential between an EV and an ICE vehicle, maintenance costs, which encompasses repairs, those things that might break and need repair, and consumables, items that need to be replaced on a regular basis. And of course, support costs that include insurance, financing costs, and infrastructure costs. A fancy way of referring to the one-time cost of building a charging arrangement for your garage. Also, we must consider tax credits that, if available, help reduce the out-of-pocket purchase cost for the vehicle itself. Let's consider at least some of these cost components in a quantitative manner. As I mentioned in the first EV economics mini course, fuel costs account for almost 25% of the yearly ownership costs for ICE cars. There is little debate that fueling costs for EVs are considerably lower in absolute terms, and that the saving, when compared to ICE vehicles, can be significant. To develop a quantitative value for cost saving, you have to project fuel costs for gasoline today and into the future, and electricity rates today and into the future. Then you use fuel efficiency data for the automobiles you're considering. Miles per gallon for ICE vehicles, MPG equivalent for EVs, and or kilowatt hours per mile for BEVs. And finally, we use the number of miles per year and the number of years of ownership to estimate overall fuel cost and fuel cost savings. We'll take a look at some numbers in just a moment. As I also mentioned, the largest differentiating component of the cost of EV ownership is the cost of fuel. In this case, electricity as compared to the cost of gasoline for a comparable ICE vehicle. To begin a fuel cost calculation, you'll have to get numbers that are specific to the EV or PHEV that you're considering, and for a comparable ICE vehicle. Once you know the mile per gallon equivalent for the EV, it's easy to compute the approximate fuel cost using the equation shown on the screen. An alternative approach is to use kilowatt hours per mile. That can be acquired from specs for your EV or from other online sources. Fuel cost can be calculated using the equation now shown on your screen in yellow by multiplying your annual mileage, the kilowatt hour per mile figure you obtain from your specs, and the electricity rate on your utility bill. It's worth taking a look at a few ballpark calculations using US averages for some of these values. Between the ages of 20 and 54, the average American drives about 15,100 miles per year. Those older than 55 drive an average of 9,000 miles per year. The average cost of gas over the past 6 months has been about $2.80 per gallon. Relatively low by historical standards in recent years. But as all of us know, that number varies dramatically year over year. The average cost of electricity nationwide is about 9 cents per kilowatt, although this can vary from 6 cents to 15 cents on a state-by-state basis. The average fuel economy for an internal combustion engine vehicle is 24.1 miles per gallon. Although that can vary from about 12 miles per gallon for large luxury sedans and SUVs to 45 miles per gallon for subcompact diesel-fueled ICE vehicles. The average fuel economy for EVs is 95 miles per gallon equivalent, or, considering energy consumption, about 0.31 kilowatt hours per mile. The fuel costs for ICE vehicles, EVs, and PHEVs are shown in the red rows of the table on your screen. On average, Fuel costs for EVs are only 23% of the fuel cost for an average ICE vehicle. On average, fuel costs for PHEVs are about 60% of the cost of an average ICE vehicle. Substantial savings indeed. In an earlier mini course, I mentioned that the used car market for EVs is very new, so it's hard to draw broad conclusions about resale sales. However, early and relatively sparse data indicate that small BEVs take a resale value hit that can be significant when compared to comparable ICE vehicles. Projections for 5-year resale value for these vehicles average 12 to 20 percentage points less than equivalent ICE vehicles. But remember, these are projections only. Large BEVs, for example a Tesla Model S, depreciate at about the same rate as comparable ICE cars, although most data for large EVs are anecdotal because the market is so new. For example, Edmunds reports that the sale of their Tesla Model S after 17 months of driving was about 80% of its new car cost, an impressive result. Note that a comparable BMW 750iL sells for about 75% of its new car cost after about 2 years. So the Model S depreciates at approximately the same rate. PHEVs do considerably better than BEVs with a depreciation differential of only a few percentage points less than a comparable ICE vehicle. Fuel cost savings and resale differential will be the major costs as you evaluate your costs of ownership. For small EVs, you will take a hit on resale, although it's difficult to make solid projections going forward. For now, you won't get as much money, but if gas prices rise and EVs gain broader traction in the market, resale value may change from a negative to a positive. You will save money on fuel. Obviously, the absolute savings are a function of your annual mileage. Bottom line, the resale differential could be a significant issue if you purchase an EV and keep it for only a few years, particularly for small BEVs. For larger BEVs and PHEVs, there is only a small differential on resale, and you'll save really big on fuel. We'll continue our discussion of quantitative cost of ownership issues in part 2 of this mini course.